Okay, so we are back. I had a call and therefore the video got cut. Anyway, so right now we're dealing with the second point that deals with how we determine whether a reasonable person in the position of the defendant would have taken steps to guard against the harm. Now, again, there's a formula to this. You don't just say that they are drunk, they are drag racing, a reasonable person therefore would have taken steps to prevent the harm. No, there's a formula that we need to apply, and we need to tell the courts or the examiner how to apply this formula. You'd have to excuse me, I keep referring to the court because I've been judging moods, and therefore this whole the court is in session is still in my head. Anyways, so what is this formula? This formula is basically four things, right? You need to consider the likelihood of the harm arising. You need to consider the extent of the damage should the harm arise against or versus the social utility of the actor's conduct and the cost or the difficulties involved in guarding against the harm occurring. Okay, so we name the first and the second, and we group them as the magnitude of the risk against the social utility of the actor's conduct and the cost involved in guarding against the harm. These four things will tell us whether a reasonable person would have taken steps to prevent that harm. So, in order for us to say that a reasonable person would have taken steps to guard against the harm, the first two need to outweigh the last two. Therefore, it means that there's different ways of actually weighing these things. But usually, if the likelihood of the harm arising is great and the extent of the damage that is likely to be is also great, however, the social utility of the actor's conduct is very small, or it's minute, and the cost of the difficulties involved in guarding against that harm is also minute, then we say there's no person who has taken steps to guard against that harm. What do I mean by social utility? What is the person trying to gain from doing this unlawful conduct? So in terms of the scenario before you, the person was trying to have fun. It was recreational. Drag racing, it was recreational. So there is some benefits to it. There is a social utility to the actor's conduct, but is that social utility so great that it outweighs the magnitude and the likelihood of the harm arising? No, the cost and the difficulties are also very small. It's simply just not drag racing. So we can definitely see that in this case that the magnitude of the risk definitely outweighs the social utility of the actor's conduct and the cost and the difficulties involved in guarding against that harm. Therefore, we say that a reasonable person would have taken steps to guard against that harm. You also need to state at the end what are the steps, right? The steps are not drag race. The steps are not drink and drive, and so on and so forth. So those are the steps that are involved. And then you need to determine whether a reasonable person, I beg your pardon, there's the last step. The last step is, did the defendant take those steps? No, the defendant did not take those steps. Therefore, they are negligent. Okay, so I've tried as best as I can to give you feedback based on the three different questions. Hopefully, most of your queries and difficulties have been answered, and you will learn from your mistakes in the future. What I can explain to you is that if you get a long question, there are three things that you need to do. You need to state the law, explain the law, and apply the law. When you state the law, you also need to state the surrounding factors or circumstances that help us determine what is the law. Okay, like I mentioned with you, in terms of negligence, the law in terms of negligence is the reasonable person's test. And the factors that I've just mentioned, the three factors for reasonable foreseeability and the four factors for reasonable preventability. Okay, those are the law. However, there are surrounding factors that you also need to discuss. You need to tell the person that negligence is an objective standard, because this is important, right? It is very important for us to know it is an objective or subjective. You need to tell the person that it's a reasonable person that we use. We need to tell the person that a person's negligence if their conduct falls short of what society expected in the circumstances. So all the best for the remaining test. That's all I have for you.